Last time on Round the Archives.
It's time for murder in Murder, She Wrote. Jessica's going to solve the crime, she does it every time. And now she's typing, then typing some more. Taking a jog along the coast, she's waving from the shore. There's loads more waving, then a fake gun bangs. Jessica's going to solve the crime, she does it every time. But things get darker by torchlight searching, looking for clues in dark places. She gets pushed down the stairs, but she's still typing and typing yet more. Jessica's going to solve the crime, she does it every time. Her book's all bound in red leather, it's time for Murder, She Wrote.
Yes, I'm here. What do you want me to do? I can't see the slate. Dark Shadows, #1, VTR 613, air date 6/27/66. Take 3.
ABC, where we'll be seeing you every Friday night.
Join us, the Addams Family.
Once each week, the Addams Family open their home and invite you to join their Addams world. They're always cooking up something special.
That's odd.
What's odd, dear?
Didn't know Cousin Imar wore turtleneck sweaters.
Oh, Father, it was terrible. They killed him. The dragon.
What dragon? Who killed the dragon?
A knight in shining armor. That isn't all. You ought to hear some of the other stories in her book.
Let me see that, darling. Grimm's Fairy Tale. What a lovely name, Grimm. How could he write such terrible stories?
He must be sick.
So drop in and see the Addams Family starring Carolyn Jones and John Astin. It's a different twist you'll enjoy every week on ABC.
Hello, I'm Andrew.
Hello, I'm Lisa.
Welcome to episode 29
Or is it 28A?
of Round the Archives. You ask, is it 28A? No, because it knackers my numbering
No, it's
system.
29 because we wanted to get episode 30 out by the end of the year.
But if you've heard episode 28, you'll know this is the second half of a two-part release looking at American television.
Indeed.
So last time we did Murder, She Wrote
And Star Trek.
and original Star Trek. This time it's more of a Gothic themed special,
yes.
isn't it? So first of all, we're going to look at the original run of the Addams Family, and then Paul will be along to do Dark Shadows.
Yes, indeed.
So we'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
They're creepy and they're kooky, mysterious and spooky. They're all together ooky, the Addams Family. The house is a museum, when people come to see them, they really are a scream, the Addams Family.
Neat. Sweet. Petite.
So get a witch's shawl on, a broomstick you can crawl on. We're gonna pay a call on the Addams Family.
So Lisa, the Addams Family.
Yes, indeed.
Indeedy.
Indeed.
Well, we've done a fair few.
We have.
I was just making the list of what
Yes.
we've done.
We've done more than I thought, actually.
Yeah. But it certainly, I don't think it was a chore doing the Addams Family
No.
at all,
Not at
because we said we've concentrated on the original black and white series. You're more familiar with the films,
I am,
aren't you?
yes.
And you said
Yes.
you'd seen some of the later
Yes. I've
sort
seen...
of remake version.
No, I think it's the animated version I've seen.
All right.
The animated version of the Addams Family, which was made in the 70s but shown over here in the 80s.
but there is a live action.
There is a live action
version
one.
as well.
I thought I'd seen the Munsters today. Having watched one episode of that, I don't think I have.
Yeah. Okay.
So
It didn't stick.
no.
But I first remember seeing the Addams Family and the Munsters in the early 80s on Channel 4, because I would have been still at school at that
Yes.
point, and I remember sort of coming home and sort of having your tea,
Yeah.
whilst these weird black and white shows that I'd never really seen or heard of sort of played out, and I remember thinking, oh, why have I missed these shows? These are really rather interesting.
Yes.
But I think we should basically just explain the setup of the Addams Family.
Yeah. So the Addams Family is based on the cartoons drawn by Charles Addams.
Yeah.
For
two Ds, we should say.
2 Ds, yes. For the New Yorker.
Yeah.
And I know you said there was some text, but a lot of them are just the
visual,
picture.
yeah.
And there's one particular one that sticks in your mind, which is a Christmas one, which is there are Christmas carolers, and the Addams are at the top of the house with a cauldron of boiling oil to pour on them.
Which is how the first
How
film
the first
opens.
film starts,
Yeah.
yes. But they never did that in a television series because I think they thought they didn't want to show them to be that cruel or merciless.
I mean, I would say that having seen some of the sort of the later TV series, which seems to be inspired by the films, it is a bit of a darker tone.
Yes.
And they've sort of turned Wednesday into a bit of a psychopath,
Yes.
haven't they? Which
Yes.
is not what she
Not
is
what
in
she
the
is,
original
no. She's very
TV series.
She's very much an ordinary little girl in an extraordinary family.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I like that more because it makes them less of a dysfunctional family. They're all actually very sort of fond of each other,
are.
I think, and
They are.
that's the
Yes.
sort of strength of the show.
I mean, I think in their minds, they are an ordinary, down-to-earth American family with slightly strange tastes.
Yeah.
But for anybody coming into the house,
They're a bit odd.
they're a bit odd.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the Munsters. But I think the Munsters are more of a down-to-earth American family.
Yeah.
In the setup, they just happen not to look like it.
Yeah. But let's just
We'll
zoom
talk
through the
about
characters
Addams,
quickly.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you've got Morticia, who's
Yes.
Carolyn Jones,
Yes.
and John Aston's playing Gomez.
Gomez, yeah.
What were you saying about their relationship?
I said, and I'm sure they do love each other, because you
Yeah.
can see that, because we watched, there's a 2-parter called Morticia's Romance, which is the story of how they met. And you can see in that they do love each other.
Yeah.
But he's very easily excited
Yeah.
by things.
When she talks French.
When she talks French and does different things. And you can, and she always says to him, later, dear, later. So she obviously does enjoy it, but just not being sort of manhandled all the time.
Should we just briefly sort of divert into that episode?
Yes.
Because you get to, as you say, you get to see their first meeting.
Their first meetings.
And weirdly, I mean, Morticia's known for the sort of long black dress and stuff.
Yeah.
But weirdly, when they first meet, she resembles Wednesday.
She does.
More,
She's
doesn't
wearing,
she?
because the Wednesday wears a little sort of black dress with the white sort of
collar.
It's like a Peter Pan collar, I think. Yeah. And she's wearing that. And she's got her hair in pigtails, like Wednesday will have. So
but originally Gomez was intended for Ophelia.
Who's her sister,
also played by
Carolyn Jones.
Yeah.
Yes. And why they're obviously very alike because it's the same actress, but they're completely different in temperament. And I must say that Ophelia is a much more annoying character, and ostensibly she's the more recognisable character. She's a more sort of normal character, but she's got some really annoying habits.
She's got all flowers in her hair, isn't she?
Yes.
But she can do like judo and stuff. So
and she spends the whole time throwing Gomez over her shoulder and all that sort of thing. So.
It's quite funny, I think, that then Gomez is really quite sickly, isn't he? Yeah. He's always like having to inhale things, and
but the moment he meets Morticia,
he gets better.
He gets better because she brings out the dashing heroic side in him.
So I just like that glimpse into what it might have been had they never met.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing. And it has to be said that sort of
excuse me.
It is actually quite a soppy series generally.
It is,
there's a lot of stuff about sort of romance and stuff like that, because even the episode we just watched today, Morticia meets royalty, where what was it, Princess
Millicent
turns up,
who's Gomez's Aunt Millicent, and it's we should say now it's pointless trying to work out either of these family trees because
They're
they
just
diverge too much.
Incredibly complicated, yeah.
So all you really need to know is the basics of the family that you see on the screen.
Because there's all the cousins and aunts, like cousin Aymar, who seems to have 3 arms, and like, it's complicated. But so the princess turns up.
Princess turns up, and she's got, because we haven't actually mentioned it, but we should mention the other characters, and we'll talk about this episode again, because obviously apart from Gomez and Morticia, you've got Uncle Fester, who's played by Jackie Coogan, who's obviously a very famous
He goes
name.
back to Charlie Chaplin,
doesn't
he?
Yeah. You've got Grandmama Addams, and you've got the 2 children, Wensley and
Pugsy.
Yeah. Wednesday, who's a little girl, and Pugsley, who's the little slightly chubby boy, and Lurch. Butler.
You said you'd like Lurch, wouldn't
I
you?
do like Lurch, yes.
But you'd like to employ him as a butler?
Yes. Well, I'd like to employ him as a bodyguard, because I have the trouble that, because I'm not very tall, when I'm walking down the street, nobody ever gets out of my way. So, but if I had Lurch walking in front of me, they would all move, because you would, wouldn't you? He's sort of 6 foot odd.
But I'm very fond of what Ted Cassidy does with Lurch, because you always know what Lurch is thinking, even if he's not said a word. It's some very
he's always looking long-suffering.
Acting.
Yes,
and if he disapproves of anything, he'll just shake his head, and you'll hear a sort of faint. And I wish I feel I ought to get in the habit of doing that in real life with people that like sort of try my patience. Just not say anything, just shake me head and walk away.
And also the one member of the family we haven't mentioned is Thing.
Now, Thing, from if you just know the movies, Thing is a hand that runs around, and you said he's a bit like a cat.
He's a bit like a cat, because there's a bit in we had a look at the start of the first film, and Gomez is talking to him, and he sort of tugs Gomez's trousers like sort of cats do.
But there are definitely shots in the original series where Thing sort of hand comes out of the box, because he sort of basically lives in a box.
Yes,
and it goes all the way up to the elbow, isn't it? So I've always thought he was a more weird creature that you just see parts of him.
Yeah.
But and
in the episode that we've just watched, Morticia Meets Royalty, with Aunt Millicent, or Princess Millicent, she brings her handmaiden, who's a hand in a box,
Lady Fingers.
Called Lady Fingers, yes. Which are sort of like trifle sponges, really.
Have you ever had them?
Lady Fingers, they're sort of like biscuity. They're sort of like the sponges you put in the bottom of a trifle.
But I love the way that you've just got 2 hands that are just acting against each other.
But you get so much emotion out of it. I mean, it's like we said before when we did the Christmas thing a couple of years ago with Emu, that you can get so much emotion by just the way you move your hand and curl your hand. And
so Thing sort of comes out of his box, turns round. It seems to be that wherever the fingers are pointing, that's where he can see.
Yes.
Isn't it? It's as though he can't see behind him.
No.
So I don't know where his eye is, or how on
maybe he sees
earth
with
it
the
works.
tips of his fingers.
Maybe. But he sort of looks around, and he almost sort of does a double take when he sees, and then he's all shy, and then he sort of goes and hides in his box and just sort of peeks out at her. And I think that's lovely and subtle.
It is.
It's remarkable how touching their story is, just because they're 2 hands.
Yeah, it's very silly.
It really is daft, but I mean, there's some lovely touches in that episode, because like sort of the princess insists that everybody sort of pays her due respect.
Yes.
So Lurch has to dress up in the sort of,
it's like a page sort of, well, I suppose it's sort of page or a butler's outfit, but the trousers are too tight, and every time he bends over they split.
He rips his trousers, so he has to have like pleats from an accordion put in. So there's this sort of accordion noise every time he bends down. And it really struck me that was like almost like something from some sort of Carry On movie or something on the soundtrack. And Uncle Fester has to be the jester. So Fester the jester. And he comes, he never walks downstairs. He's got a fireman's pole, and he always slides down the fireman's pole. Yeah.
So, which is sort of quicker, I suppose.
But yeah, lovely. But yeah, I mean, the first episode is the Addams Family goes to school, where the kids are made to go to school.
Made to go to school. The truant officer comes.
Yeah. And they're really upset after their first day, aren't they?
Because they've heard some Grimm's fairy tales and heard about the knight that kills the dragon, and they come in and they go, "It was awful. They killed the dragon."
But to be honest, I can understand that.
I like dragons.
That it's very much the case that I would be on the side of the dragon.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think you would be too. Morticia and the psychiatrist. Pugsley is dressing up as a Boy Scout, and everyone's aghast at this.
And he's helping old ladies cross the road, and then he gets a little puppy because he's got. I can't remember what he had before. Did he have a lizard or something?
Boy and his lizard, something like that. Yeah. Well, you see, I wouldn't mind a lizard either.
Lizards are sweet.
Yeah. But you say when he hides the dog under the Boy Scout hat, doesn't it? And you just see the hat moving about. And
then they lift the Morticia, I think it is, lifts the hat up, and there's this little tiny sweet little.
He's almost shivering, isn't he?
Yeah, he's probably cold, poor little thing.
Wednesday leaves home. Well, she doesn't leave home at first. She just goes and hides under Pugsley's bed.
She goes and hides in Pugsley's room because she's been shooting off Uncle Fester's
explosives. That's right.
Yeah.
But eventually she does actually sort of leave home, and she takes a spider with her. That's Aristotle, isn't it?
Yes.
That's quite fun. One that really I identified with, there's Lurch learns to dance.
Yes, because he's going to the butler's ball.
Yeah, but he's a wallflower, isn't he?
Yes, he's this big, huge. I mean, he's got to be 6'5", 6'6", and he's just really shy and doesn't want to draw attention to himself.
Because isn't it when he's there? What's he dressed as? It's like sort of little
it's like
Lord
a fancy
Fauntleroy.
dress party, isn't it? I don't really know. Yeah.
But he's sat there and he's got this sort of big lollipop thing, hasn't he? There's sort of swirly pattern on it. Morticia sort of goes in disguise.
Yeah, she disguises herself.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's perfectly obvious that it's her, but but yeah.
Perhaps he's just too polite to mention it.
Yeah, she's sort of there to bring him out of himself a bit. But yeah, Uncle Fester's toupee. What?
Yes.
What?
Yes. We try to look at episodes that showcased different members of the family.
Yeah.
And this one looked interesting because obviously, I mean, obviously he wasn't in real life, but I don't think. But Fester is completely bald.
Yeah.
And he's been writing to somebody, and she's coming to a lady, and she's coming to visit him, and she thinks he's got lots of hair. So they phone up this toupee salesman who takes one look at them and leaves all the samples and runs away.
Yeah.
So they keep trying these different toupees on Fester to try and work out which one suits him best. And
some points there for the full name of his pen pal, which is Madeline Cavendish Beauregard Faversham Firestone Smith.
Yes.
By the time you'd written that, you'd be tired, wouldn't you?
You would,
on the envelope. But yeah, I mean, what do you, now that you've seen sort of, half a dozen or more in fairly sort of close succession, what do you think of it as a series?
Yeah, I do like it. I can see why they chose to not remake it, but to do new versions of the film, because it's a very interesting family dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, one of the sort of things that I really like about it is that it's quite underplayed a lot of the time. Well, the comedy.
Yes.
In that the audience laughter track is quite low down in the mix.
It's not one of these ones where
it tells you when to laugh,
isn't
it? Yeah. And to be honest, there are sequences where there's virtually no laughter on it, and it really sells it to me.
Yeah.
That I'm not being constantly reminded this is a TV show. I just think I'm spending time with some people that I quite like.
Yeah. So, I mean, as regards acting styles, John Astin's, who plays Gomez's acting style, is possibly a little more rich than the other characters.
Yeah.
He plays it to the full. He doesn't necessarily overact it, but he gives it all he's got.
Yeah.
shall we say.
Okay.
And he's maybe not as naturalistic as Carolyn Jones is. But
I mean, again, these are sort of a group of actors for which I've seen very little of their other work. So, coming to it in 1983.
Yeah.
For the ever since that's been the characters for me. So, but equally, yes, you said we've seen sort of John Astin in Murder She Wrote, and that's the point to which I can't take him seriously.
No.
You see,
right.
So I take him utterly seriously as Gomez, but if he's anything else, then it doesn't quite. It's not quite so believable for me.
No, I can understand that. So.
But yeah, I mean, there's as we said, there's a great big long list of
episodes
of episodes to get through, because it's 64 episodes over a fairly brief span, because it runs from September 1964. It runs into 1966 April. For the final episode. So that's a fair old bit. But yeah, after some research by some very clever friends of ours, we finally tracked down the earliest transmission anyone can find in the listings in the UK is Saturday the 6th of February 1965.
All right, okay.
So given that it was September 64, it was shown over there. Yeah. It sort of flew over. Though interestingly, we've got 9:40 p.m. for a showing.
Okay.
Yeah, not sort of 6 o'clock as you might expect, because it got, there's the Channel 4 showings, but there were also showings on BBC Two in the 90s, weren't there? And that was definitely in the sort of 6 o'clock, 6 to 7 sort
sci-fi
of
slot,
sci-fi stroke weird slot. So yeah.
And where was it shown first of all?
TWW. Show is the first showing that we've got, which means Television Wales and the West.
Okay.
So yeah, it's sort of down sort of Cardiff, Cornwall.
So what went on to be Harlech, I suppose?
Yes, yeah. I think TWW loses its franchise about 1967, I think, something like that.
All right.
Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, franchise lost in 1967 in favour of the Harlech Consortium.
Okay. But Harlech's just Wales, though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it's HTV, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, ITV Wales and West, as it's now known, previously known as HTV, but. It's weird the way it works, because it's also Bristol as well.
Yeah.
Or it's all sort of lumped together. So all those kids shows from the 70s, which were a bit weird, were all HTV.
Yeah,
if you notice.
Into the Labyrinth.
And
King of the Castle.
Yeah, all of that. So yeah, they were quite into their sort of fantasy stuff there. But yeah, I really like going back to the Addams Family. It's been a while since I've sort of sat down and watched it en masse, as it were.
Yes.
But yeah, I really, and I've said this before, I really think I'd enjoy spending a weekend at their house. And you get the feeling that they'd be very welcoming, I think.
Yeah, they like me. They like having people visit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people just get really freaked out while they're there because of various things that are in the house, and bat-shaped cookies and things, and
Well, they're fine,
Yeah. It's the thing about you should watch out for that one. It wriggles as it goes down, or something. It's the cookie.
Yeah. Well, maybe I might refuse those, but we should say about what was it? In Morticia's Romance, who the guest star is as well.
Who plays Morticia's mother.
Yeah.
Is it Mother Crump?
Yeah, it's Margaret Hamilton.
Margaret Hamilton, who's the Wicked Witch of the West in Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, she's quite a... I don't know. I mean, was she a big name to get by this point?
I don't know whether she was quite so well known then. Because obviously she's quite recognisable in The Wizard of Oz, and she's still fairly recognisable in this.
Yeah.
You can see it's her.
I mean, Wizard of Oz is, 1939,
Yes.
isn't it?
So that's 20-odd years before.
Yeah, this is 1965. So, yeah, it's a little bit later. But I think she's sort of... Because she's very strong character, isn't she?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
she's... you're not going to argue with her.
No.
But yeah, all in all, really great series, and I just glad that we finally got around to doing it.
Yes.
So there we are. Okay, there's the Addams Family then. As we said, now Paul will be along to look at Dark Shadows. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Enter the world of Dark Shadows tonight at 11:30.
At last, the darkness has come. Goodbye, Maggie Evans. I might have loved you. I might have spared you. But now, you must die.
Dark Shadows tonight at 11:30 on Channel 44.
Hello again, it's me, Paul the Shy Yeti. I'm back again on Round the Archives to discuss one of my favourite US shows, one that for a long time was quite hard to come by, the show being Dark Shadows, which back in the early 90s, as I say, I had never heard of it. It's one of those shows that slowly crept up on me. I remember buying a sort of bootleg tape at a comic mart, because there were sort of video compilations that had been released in the States, and they begun to appear over here, and then later they showed Dark Shadows on some satellite channels which I didn't have access to, but my friend Andy and my good friend Lisa of Round the Archives, together they recorded the whole show for me, all 1,200 and something episodes, and I was able to watch the series, and I spent a lot of the 90s doing that. In the 90s there was a revival series that didn't last very long. There'd also been a series of novels back in the 60s and early 70s, and a few novels in the 90s and noughties, and then Big Finish picked up Dark Shadows and has done audio plays of them. I have to say that I've not really focused on hardly any of the spin-offs, partly because there just isn't enough time in the day, in the same way as I can't keep up with everything that's released linked to Doctor Who. But the actual Dark Shadows 60s and early 70s TV show, it's still one of my favourites. And I've even met one or two. Well, I haven't met two, I've just met one. But it doesn't seem right just to say I've met one member of the cast. I have met one member of the cast. I met the lady, Catherine Lee Scott, who played Maggie. But anyway, there is so much of Dark Shadows to talk about. As soon as I begin to start speaking, I find myself going down lots of different twisty-turny pathways of trying to explain the show. I think the best way is to say it was a Gothic soap opera or Gothic drama, 20-minute episodes, sort of 20 minutes, 22 minutes an episode, shown between 1966 and 1971. It had a very big cult following in the States, not just with adults, but also with school kids coming home from school. It was the Neighbours of its day, except not say in Australia, and far more vampires and werewolves. The show started off more with sort of dark family secrets and blackmail and all sorts of things, but slowly plots about ghosts, and one of my favourite plot lines involved a phoenix the mother of one of the main characters, returned after a long time away, and it turned out that she was dead and was a phoenix and needed to be reborn in a fire. But and then along comes Barnabas Collins the vampire, and then there's werewolves and Frankenstein's monster-style creations, and basically throughout the run of the series, they covered most of the major sort of Gothic stories in the way that Doctor Who did. There was Jekyll and Hyde stories, there was time travel stories, there was alternate reality stories, and they often found ways of sort of setting whole months of the show in different time periods where you got to meet different members of the Collins family.
Barnabas Collins has again become the innocent victim of time. On this night, he has returned to the year 1796 and has changed an event that had once ended in tragedy. Nevertheless, tragedy has prevailed, for as Barnabas made his way to the old house to meet his beloved Josette, he suddenly found himself in a foggy area in the woods that he had never seen before. Then two mysterious strangers appeared and overpowered him. At the old house, Josette, fearing that Barnabas had forsaken her, has taken her own life. But Barnabas does not and will not know this, for he remains a prisoner, his fate in the hands of two mysterious beings.
My favourite era of the show is one of the least popular eras of the show. It dates back to late 1969 into 1970, and it involves characters known as the Leviathans. Now, Barnabas Collins, the vampire, he was, for most of the time, quite a reluctant vampire, and actually a sort of anti-hero. But during the Leviathan plotline, he was sort of reverted to his evil self. And this wasn't popular. The fans liked Barnabas being an anti-hero, and they were not pleased. And in fact, about halfway through the plotline, they had to find a way to sort of turn him back into the sympathetic vampire character that he had been, so that he could help sort of resolve the storyline. The show was probably at its height just before the Leviathan plotline. There were plans for movies, and they did eventually make 2 movies in the early 70s, but the ratings went from being at an all-time high to rapidly falling during this period. But personally, I like the plotline involving the Leviathans.
Everything is ready. We can begin now.
He will know us when he rises from this sleep. And then he shall show us the way to a new and everlasting life.
Let me tell you a little bit more about this plotline. So the Leviathans were a race of beings who ruled the earth before mankind came into existence. Their forms were hideous and inhuman, although many Leviathans took human shape after they lost control of the planet. They longed to return to Earth and reclaim it as their own. To that end, they seized control of the mind of Barnabas Collins in 1796 because he had mastered the power to travel through time and could carry the essence of their leader into the 20th century. Various characters in the show ended up making pacts with them, and just before I begun recording this article, I went back, and for those of you who have never seen Dark Shadows and yet have access to Amazon Prime, all of the episodes, well, in fact, one episode of the original series does not exist, but there is a audio reconstruction of that. Goodness knows how they managed to lose just that one. As Doctor Who fans, we're used to episodes being missing, and we're also kind of aware of why that happened to a certain extent. But I've never actually seen anything written about, like, missing episodes of Dark Shadows, or if, say, I don't know, if there were ever more missing. I mean, considering that I was watching the series back in the early 90s, the chances are that it was just this one episode, but why just that one? It baffles me. I could be wrong. I'm not as deep in Dark Shadows fandom by any means as I am into Doctor Who fandom, but I don't get the feeling that there's quite as much about the behind-the-scenes sort of archival status of the show in the way that, you know, you turn to old Doctor Who magazines and there are whole articles about, you know, they sent these episodes to these countries and those countries, and this is what happened to this kid, and this is what and it's very well documented. I don't think that is the case with Dark Shadows, but I guess if there isn't that much missing, then maybe that's never been necessary. But anyway, what is good in this day and age, though, is that, yes, if you have something like Amazon Prime, you literally have access to all of the episodes of Dark Shadows. And not to say that I regret having spent so much money on buying all of the Region 1 DVDs of the whole series. I certainly don't. But because I don't trust that these services won't, suddenly vanish one day. But anyway, for anyone who hasn't watched Dark Shadows and wants to and has access to Amazon Prime, there it is. Search it out. And the episode that I was watching before I started this review is episode 887, which was broadcast on the 18th of November 1969. The plot summary says that Leviathans greet Barnabas as their master and gives him a mysterious box.
The past is but the beginning of the beginning. And all that is and has been is but the twilight of the dawn. A day will come, and beings which are now latent in our thoughts and hidden in our loins shall stand upon this earth as one stands upon a footstool, and shall laugh and shall reach out their hands amid the stars.
Between ancient sacred stones, and guide us to the threshold of a time to be, and restore our flesh and bones.
My name is Oberon.
And I am Hazel.
We bid you welcome, Master.
You have performed your tasks well.
Thank you, Master.
There is one thing that must be done before I leave. You have the ancient book.
Yes, we have it.
And I shall do what must be done. Have you made the necessary preparations?
Everything is ready for you, Master.
Now, one of the things I really love about Dark Shadows is when they do episodes set in the then current day, I've always had a slight problem with even links to sort of, things like Hammer films. I've never, for some reason, enjoyed the period films. I love like the Hammer films that are set in the 70s, or in, such as the couple of Dracula films that were set in 72 and 73. I don't know. I sort of lose interest when people start wearing funny frocks and it's set in the past. I don't know. I guess the nostalgia fan in me, even though I was barely born in the early 70s, I like seeing the costumes of the day. I think it's probably why I like Amicus films more than I like Hammer films. But anyway, I'm getting off the point. I told you I keep getting off the point. It's difficult when you're trying to tackle a whole show. So yeah. So I think one of the reasons that I like this period of Dark Shadows is that it is set in late 69, early 70s. Some of the fashions are eye-dazzling, and occasionally there's a character called Elizabeth who in one episode wears a dress that makes the screen strobe. It is a colour that sort of dark. It's more like she's wearing a dress that's made of some sort of void. And another thing I particularly like about this plotline is one of the main locations. And in episode 888, two of the characters, Julia and Carolyn, they meet Megan and Philip Todd, who own an antique shop. Now, they are also Leviathan followers. But this antique shop, it's a set that had never been used in the show before. I think it's a great set. It inspired me with my own writing. I wrote some novels for big kids concerning Gladstone McWhiskers, The Mouse of Commons and Lords. And the second novel, I set a lot of it in an antique shop because even though it was quite a while after I'd seen these episodes, they were still in my head and they were still inspiring me. There are also plot lines in this Leviathan segment of Dark Shadows that reminds me of another series, but I'll come to that in a minute. Let me just tell you a little bit more about about this period of the show. So the Leviathan segment of Dark Shadows runs from episode 885 to episode 980, which is from November the 14th, 1969 to March the 27th, 1970. There are lots of fans who believe that it was this era of the show that sort of hastened the final axing of the show, although that didn't happen for another year until sort of spring of 1971. But yeah, I guess if the ratings started to slide for whatever reason, that may be the case. It's just that it is an era that I particularly like. Now, as I've said before, Dark Shadows often dipped into other sort of Gothic writings, and the Leviathans are inspired by the 20th century writings of H.P. Lovecraft, the short stories of which were enjoying a resurgence in popularity in print and other media in the late 60s and early 70s. So having the show be inspired by H.P. Lovecraft would have seemed like, you know, an obvious sort of thing to do, as they hadn't touched that area before. But possibly it was the fact that it was not as familiar a reference to some of the viewers, particularly the younger ones. And as I've said before, I think from what I've read, it would appear that viewers did not like Barnabas going from being a sort of anti-hero to being an all-out baddie and being the leader of the Leviathans. But personally, I loved all that. Of course, with Dark Shadows, I mean, Dark Shadows does compare to sort of perhaps 60s Doctor Who, in that a lot of it was done live. There are fluffed lines, and sometimes the acting can be a bit varied. Certainly, the characters of Philip and Megan, who run the antique shop at the start of this period, Philip is quite wooden, but delightfully wooden. I mean, this is the trouble, I guess. I love all that. I love anything when the acting's bad or wooden or over the top. I mean, there's nothing better than me than watching a 70s Italian horror movie with bad dubbing. I mean, that's absolute heaven to me. So, yeah, if you're expecting sort of Shakespeare, then perhaps Dark Shadows is not for you. But
one whale oil lamp.
One sewn by Herman Melville. Moby Dick was born by the light of this priceless object.
Now, you're not going to describe it that way.
Well, anything to drum up a little business. What's next?
One exquisite clock.
With a slightly broken pendulum.
Don't worry, I'll fix it. I'll put it aside.
Hello.
Hello, Carol.
Hi, Carolyn.
Philip and Megan, Todd, I'd like you to meet Dr. Julia Hoffman.
How do you do?
Hello. Hello, Doctor.
I've told her all about your shop.
Hey, maybe we should hire you to spread the word about us.
You don't have to hire me. I'll do it anyway. I'm so impressed with what you have here.
Well, make yourself at home, Doctor. If you have a question about anything, just ask.
Thank you.
Have you bought new things since yesterday?
We were at an auction this morning.
Find anything spectacular?
now, I did mention that this period of the show reminds me of another series, which came after it, and I'm sure wasn't directly inspired because, you know, it was a UK show. But during the Leviathan plot line, there is a Leviathan child who comes to the antique shop and is sort of looked after by Megan and Philip. And as the story goes on, it jumps in age. It goes from being a small child to being an older child to suddenly being fully grown, in the same way as there's the character in the third story of Sapphire and Steel who jumps from being a baby to being an adult. I don't know. I think this whole period has always reminded me a bit of Sapphire and Steel. I think it's partly the antique shop setting. I guess because the fourth story of Sapphire and Steel is, well, it's set in that sort of bric-a-brac photography shop, and I feel like an antique shop is also, you know, another obvious location for Sapphire and Steel. So this whole period of Dark Shadows there's so many reasons I like it. There's a lot of sort of Gothic horror, particularly when the Leviathan child is turning into the next stage of its development. You don't see that much. You see sort of lights pulsing from its room. You sort of see slime across the floor. People die. It's fantastically campily cool. I suppose I just love it. There's the bad acting. There's the contemporary setting. There's the fact that it reminds me of Sapphire and Steel. And there's also one of my all-time favourite cliffhangers The character that I mentioned, Carolyn, her father comes back, having not been seen on the show for quite a number of years. He returns to the show. He gets pulled into the plot line, and, well, spoilers, he ends up dead. And there is a cliffhanger where they have to dig up his grave. And they open the coffin, and his face is like sort of a grimace of horror. Except the actor has clearly left the show a few weeks before, and when you see the face, it's quite clearly a close-up on a still of his face. So obviously before they left, they got him to do a grimace to the camera, and so, you know, the Dark Shadows music plays. It's all very atmospheric, and then you see this still of his face, and I don't think you'd even notice it if you weren't looking for it. It's quite a quick shot, but I played it back a number of times, and it's wonderful. It's one of my favourite moments in the whole show. There is no way that I can even cover this 100-episode period of the show, but all I will say is that it's an era of the show that I think is glorious and marvellous. And yes, there might have been ways they could have done it better. In reminding myself about this era of the show, I read a few articles that suggested, oh, well, they should have done this, they should have done that, but, well, yes, maybe they should, but they didn't. And what they did do, to me, it's my favourite era of the show. I think partly because, you know, vampires, werewolves, Frankenstein's monsters, Jekyll and Hyde, it's so familiar. At the time, to have that on a soap opera, to have that on Dark Shadows, that would have been amazing. But in 2018, we've seen so many shows with werewolves and vampires, and we've seen Hammer films, and the twists, you know, a few people probably come to Dark Shadows knowing nothing about the show. But at the time, you know, they didn't know that when Barnabas survived, he was going to be a vampire. All these things, those twists, you know, are lost due to the fact it's now entered sort of, you know, like pop culture. But the Leviathan period, I would have said, would be something that, although it is inspired by Lovecraft, it isn't as familiar, and I didn't quite know what was coming next. And I really loved it.
What are you doing?
I think we ought to close the shop early today.
Now, wait a minute. Let's not carry this celebration bit too far. We may still get a few customers to put to our new record.
Philip, do you believe in premonitions?
No. Why?
I just had one.
Congratulations.
No, I'm serious.
Honey, what's the matter?
I don't know. I have this strange feeling. Something terrible is going to happen to us if we stay here. Philip, I think we should sell the shop and leave Collinsport.
Sell the shop?
Yes.
But we just bought it. Megan, what's gotten into you? You should be ecstatic.
And I was. A minute ago.
Well, you can't let one fleeting thought spoil everything. Things are just beginning to look up. We're going to be a big success.
The whole show is just full of so many twists and turns, and it really... and for me, I was lucky enough to discover it and have access to it in that period when Doctor Who wasn't on the TV anymore, and suddenly I had this whole new show, at least new to me. It had stopped being made 20 years before when I first saw it, but it really did fill a lovely gap when there was no Who on TV, and I'll always be grateful for it. And there are so many more fans of the show now, so many more people have seen it, but I'm sure if you haven't tried it and you love early Doctor Who, then Dark Shadows, you know, is really something that's worth exploring. And thank you to Andrew and Lisa for letting me talk a little bit about it. It's difficult to do an article about such a long series and package it neatly for an article, but when Andrew and Lisa asked me to do so, I thought immediately, well, I'll be talking about the Leviathan period, and we'll see what else happens. So I hope you've enjoyed this article and that I haven't rambled too much. Or if I have rambled too much, then it's at least made some sense and piqued your interest, at least somewhat. Okay.
Who are you?
This is me, Paul the Shy Yeti, of the Shy Life podcast. And hopefully I'll be back again soon. Okay, ta-ta for now. Bye now.
Where the Action Is made its debut 1 year ago this week with top recording stars performing Where the Fun Is. Come along for a real good time next here on ABC. Dark Shadows has been a Dan Curtis production.
Thank you very much to Paul.
Yes, thank you, Paul. Yes. Another lovely article from Mr. Shy Yeti.
Yes, of course. Let's plug Paul's podcast, the Shy Life podcast, available on SoundCloud.
It is.
And if you can find ours, you can probably find his.
You probably can.
Do you remember taping Dark Shadows incessantly for Paul?
I do. I think I did it on long play as well, which is probably a crime now because it got more episodes on the tape. And probably it wasn't the best quality anyway, so it didn't matter if it was a little bit... Yeah, it was just a case of... It was on at sort of some ungodly hour of the morning, so it was just a case of putting the tape in and setting it for however many episodes you thought you'd get on the tape.
Ever have any disasters or not?
I don't
or did
remember.
It work most of the time?
It seemed to work most of the time.
Well, you did some, and then...
Yes.
Was it Andy took over as well? Yeah. All right. But quick sort of correction for ourselves about the pets of the Addams family children. Yeah. Let's see. Now, Pugsley owns the octopus, and that's called Aristotle. Yes. I was getting confused.
Obviously, Aristotle the octopus.
Obviously.
Wednesday's
spider is called Homer.
Yes.
And she's also got a lizard, and the lizard's named Lucifer.
Lucifer the lizard.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
It is.
You could call a lizard that, couldn't you?
You could. You'd get a few raised eyebrows if you took it to the vets.
Well, because of course our vet sort of says by the full name, doesn't it?
Well, it doesn't do the full name. He said when you go to the vet, they call your pet's name. So it's normally Martha, because Rose doesn't like going to the vet. So it comes to.
I just imagine the vet coming out. Could we have Lucifer, please?
Lucifer, please. Yes.
But right, so that's almost all this issue done, isn't it?
Yes.
Except for us again, who will now take a visit to the home of
the Munsters.
Lisa.
Andrew.
The Munsters.
Yes.
We've just done the Munsters.
We have.
Well, we're doing the Munsters.
We're doing the Munsters now, yeah.
We did a poll, didn't we?
We did. We forgot to mention this earlier.
Yeah. Whom do you prefer, the Munsters or the Addams Family? Or do you like them both? And we put it on Twitter.
Yes.
And I'm quite pleased with the results, actually.
Yes.
Because after 59 votes, the Munsters scored 36%. The Addams Family scored 31%. But like them both scored 34%.
Yes.
So that's very nicely,
it's quite balanced,
evenly
yes.
distributed. And I find it hard to call. But the Munsters is different to the Addams Family in several ways.
Yes. One of the biggest ones of those being it's played more for comedy.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. The Addams Family humour can be quite subtle, I think. The Munsters goes for more sort of laugh out loud.
Yes, it's a
moments,
bit more
doesn't
in
it?
your face.
Yeah. And there have been moments where I've sort of rolled my eyes a bit at the Munsters, but when it sort of hits the target, then that's some of the funniest bits in both series.
You've laughed quite a lot, haven't you, at some of it?
Yeah, and we're trying to remember some of there's two bits especially that I just laughed my head off at.
And I think with the Munsters as well, it's an attempt to do a traditional family sitcom, but in a different situation.
Yeah.
Because basically, not that I've seen sort of Leave It to Beaver or anything like that, but it's basically something like that, or which, you know, a Partridge Family or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
But in a really different situation. And as in their own minds and their own lives, the Munsters are completely normal.
Yeah.
Marilyn is slightly abnormal because she looks different to them. But their family is a perfectly normal family.
But let's rattle very quickly through the characters. So you've got Herman.
Herman, yes.
Played by Fred Gwynne, who of course sort of resembles a Frankenstein's monster.
Yes. Well, he's sort of Frankenstein's monster, isn't he? Yeah.
Lily, who's Yvonne De Carlo.
Yes.
Sort of replacing the pilot version, which is Phoebe, played by Joan Marshall, who does look a lot like
Morticia.
Like Morticia.
So you can see why they went completely away from that to a different actress.
Yeah. Al Lewis playing Grandpa.
Yes.
Or the Count.
The Count. He's fabulous. I love Al Lewis. And when he and Fred Gwynne get scenes together, they work really well together. Because obviously they've worked together before in Car 54, Where Are You?
Which we've seen a couple of now.
Don't need to see any more. And they're really great together.
Yeah, I mean, Marilyn is the thankless role, really.
Marilyn's, she's just there to be... I don't really know what she does in the family, really.
Yeah.
She gets a few stories where...
It's more about her love life,
isn't it?
But, you know, even in the series, the original series, there's two people playing Marilyn, Beverly Owen, later Pat Priest. But I think it's a bit like Trillian in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Over the years, lots of people have played the part, all slightly differently. Because there's maybe not a lot of to get hold of, really.
No, she's quite... Because I was thinking this yesterday. We were watching a programme on television about Hollywood actresses, and they had Doris Day on there.
Yeah.
And I think that's who they've based the look on.
Yeah. With
the hair and everything. She's very Doris Day-like.
Right.
So.
And, of course, Eddie.
Yes.
Who's Butch Patrick replacing Happy Durman, who didn't seem to be very happy from the pilot episode.
No.
Now, we should talk about, you know, obviously Herman is Frankenstein's monster.
Yes.
Grandpa is clearly...
Count Dracula.
A vampire.
Well, he's called Dracula, so he's Count Dracula.
And he does go to bite his own family members, doesn't he, occasionally?
They have to sort of tick him off each time. No, Grandpa.
But there does seem to be a strain of werewolf in the family as well, doesn't there?
Yes, because there was an occasion where he turns into a wolf. Because there's one episode where they go camping and he turns into a wolf, and he does in the film as well.
Yeah. But, wasn't it, Lily's brother...
Yes, Lily's brother, Lester, is the Wolfman.
Is actually the Wolfman, which explains why Eddie is sort of a bit werewolfy as well, you know. So it does follow through the male line of it. So, it's sort of... werewolf stroke vampire, really. It's a weird mix. Yeah.
Well, perhaps he's a vampire that was bitten by a werewolf.
Oh, possibly. I don't know. I don't know quite how that works. But let's just sort of zoom through the episodes we've seen. Yeah, we should say we have done videos on our YouTube channel for both the Addams Family and the Munsters, which you can sort of watch in parallel with these articles. So, you know, just search for us, Lisa Parker, because we did those around Halloween, didn't we? But the Munsters, I like the packaging of the DVD.
Yes, it's in a sort of tombstone, isn't it?
Yeah, it's called the Closed Casket Collection or something, isn't it? I don't know whether you can still get it or not.
I think you can, but it's been repackaged since.
Although we have discovered that at least one of our discs seems to be suffering from disc rot, doesn't it?
Yes.
There's one episode
sort
of jammed about halfway through and refused to play.
Yeah.
I think we talked in the video about the first episode, didn't we? Munster Masquerade, where they go to the ball, with sort of Herman in a suit of armour, isn't it? So, and then the joke is he takes his sort of hat off, and they think he's got another costume underneath.
Yeah.
But Do you think, from what we've seen, there's a noticeable difference between seasons 1 or 2?
Season 2 is a little bit sillier in the terms of the stories it tells. But having said that, Just Never Pretty Faces from series 2, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or season 2. And we watched that one. That was the one the disc wouldn't play on, so we had to try and finish it up somewhere else. And I like that episode, because that episode, it's because obviously Fred Gwynne, who plays Herman, has to sit in the makeup chair for a couple of hours before anybody else to get him looking like Frankenstein's monster. So just for that one episode, the storyline is that there's Herman gets struck by lightning, and his face is changed, and he's just Fred Gwynne without the makeup. And it's really interesting to see, because you can see, because obviously the makeup that he wears is quite restricting. So to get any expression into it, he really has to pull faces underneath to get the sort of expression, which he does really well. But he obviously, when he's playing it with his normal face, he's got to try and dial that down a bit, because obviously it would be too.
That episode is fine until you get to the sort of bit at the end where he turns into a woman.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why that happens. It's just for laughs.
I mean, how on earth that is meant to work? I really don't know.
Grandpa gets very confused.
Yeah.
But it's a very interesting episode, and it just shows what a handsome man Fred Gwynne was as well.
So from season 1, we've also done If Martian Answers Hang Up.
Yes.
I quite like that. It's quite silly.
It's very silly,
but Herman's got a ham radio, and there's a couple of kids playing at Martians with radios. And he sort of, he thinks there's going to be an
invasion.
Martian invasion. Although, as I said to you, this is around the period when sort of UFOs were quite sort of...
Yes.
There was a lot of UFO sort of reporting going on. And like even Jimmy Carter fills in a UFO report form at some point.
Former President of the United States. In case anybody knows. Know.
Before he was.
Yeah, Well, he went on to be President of the United States.
But I think he was looking at Venus or something.
Possibly,
But I just love the way that sort of they panic and go to the sort of US Air Force.
Yes.
Don't they? But I mean, one of the highlights for me was Love Locked Out.
Yes.
Herman goes to an office party and Lily's fed up with him and locks him out of the room.
Yeah.
And they end up going to like marriage counsellors and things like that. And to me, that sort of plot could be in anything.
It could. That's what I mean when I say that it's an ordinary American family sitcom, but just in an extraordinary location.
I mean, you could do that plot with Terry and June.
You could.
Just exactly the same.
Yeah. But it's funnier with Herman and Lily because, and I know it's a bit you like, because he has to sleep on the sofa, doesn't he, downstairs? And, well, you explain what happens.
Well, the whole point about Herman, he's a real innocent, isn't he? Isn't he?
Yes.
And
he's Frankenstein's monster in the book.
Yeah. And he's not violent or aggressive in any way.
No.
And he gets really scared at one point because there's a mouse, isn't there? And he sort of calls for help.
He starts screaming and he jumps on the sofa and Grandpa and Eddie come down to see him, don't they?
And they say, what was it? It was a mean mouse and it made a face at me.
Yes.
And I just laughed out loud at that.
Because it's the way he says it.
Yeah, because he's like really indignant that not only was there a mouse, but it made a face.
Yes, it made a face at him.
And there's no shot of it making a face.
No, there's no shot of a mouse, is there?
It's just in his imagination, and I really like that.
From that point onwards, until he and Lily make up, because Eddie's got this little sort of werewolf doll called Woof Woof, isn't he?
That's right.
And he gives him Woof Woof to sleep with, which is
cuddle.
really sweet.
You like that? Yeah. Okay, but that was really nice because, as I said, that is so universal a plot.
You can do that anytime.
It works really well, I think. Similarly, there's Happy 100th Anniversary.
Yes.
Which is from season 2. So they were married in 1865.
Yeah.
Because this is October 1965. This one's shown. So they're gonna buy each other a present. But they both put a check in at the same time.
And get over. Well, no, they don't get overdrawn, but both.
Neither checks are cashed.
No, they're both.
I don't quite understand that. I thought a bank would normally do one, but they say they both arrived at the same time. So
they just
so theoretically one of them could have been cash.
Yes.
But they go and get a job on a
temporary job,
sort of welding a ship,
at
don't
the local shipyard. Now I want to know where both of them get their welding skills from.
Yeah.
because there's no indication that either of them can weld, really, up until that point. But
maybe they get a bit of training for the first week. I
yeah.
really don't know how hard it is. But
quite hard, I would imagine.
I would have thought so. Cause...
Using fire. I didn't think that Herman liked fire either.
No, well, all right, maybe not. But it's the bit, because they've both got the masks and you can see just how big Fred Gwynn is against Yvonne at this point.
Because he was, I think he was something like 6'5", and then you said they gave him built-up boots as well.
Yeah.
So he must be nearing 7 foot.
Yeah, and then you've got the head sort of built up a bit as well. Yeah. But he quite likes this co-worker that he doesn't know who he is.
He does, and he does this sort of thing with a welding torch, and he says, "I'm a boy," and he sprays it on the wall, and then she replies, "I'm a girl." Which nobody ever does in real life.
She actually writes tee-hee.
She writes tee-hee, and then she puts her hands to her mouth and puts her shoulders up, which I've never seen anybody do in real life. But it's very funny.
But they're sort of flirting with each other. But then it's really stupid, because then they're cross
with each other.
That they've been flirting with somebody who they don't know.
Yes.
And again, that's almost a sort of Terry and June type thing, isn't it?
Until Grandpa points out it must mean that they're made for each other, because even though they couldn't see each other's faces, they instinctively sort of fell in love with the other person because it's their soulmates, which makes them all soppy.
But you said, we've done Just Another Pretty Face.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the one where they divide the house as well?
Oh, House Divided.
House Divided, yeah. Because they've been making a go-kart for
Eddie's birthday, and Herman breaks it.
Now that is sort of, Herman gets in the go-kart and it goes off up the road. That's one of those sort of speeded up film sequences that I slightly roll my eyes at. That it's slightly heavy-handed, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole painting the white line down the house. It started to be very familiar from Steptoe and Son, didn't it?
It did. And you do wonder if Galton and Simpson
Galton and Simpson did go over to America in the late 60s, so they might have seen it there. Mm-hmm. There's also the possibility that they might have seen it on UK television, because again, Munsters is shown 1965. It's a little hard to track down the individual transmissions. BBC Genome has got something on it, but I haven't been able to sort of positively identify that A House Divided was shown over here. But I guess again, it's a plot that you could stumble across anyway. It's a fairly obvious thing to do at some point. But it's the fact that Grandpa's got the telly on his side, isn't it? So he becomes like old man Steptoe. I've got the knobs on my side. So that's fun. But wasn't it they even divide Spot up, don't they, or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Because Spot's
the pet. He's a dragon
that lives under the stairs.
Yes, and they also have a black cat called Kitty Cat.
And she does look like very much like Martha. You really like her.
She's more elegant than Martha, because Martha's a bit of a clumsy cat. Bless her heart.
But we did also look at the first movie, didn't we? Which was Munster Go Home.
Yes. Which has Terry Thomas in it.
Well, this is the thing that... as with the Addams Family, the sort of Munster family sort of tree and their history, you get sort of hints at, and I've never sat down to work out whether it all sort of joins up, but suddenly you get the thing that Herman's related to Terry Thomas.
Yes. He's adopted by Terry Thomas's father, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he leaves the see, I don't actually think you can do that. I don't think you can leave if somebody's a lord, their firstborn son is the heir. You cannot pass it to somebody under British law.
Yeah.
You have to be... people that are adopted are not included in that.
But
But because it's an American film, they sort of fudge it, don't they?
Yeah,
So.
I mean, I quite like the stuff where the sort of Munsters are going to England.
Yeah.
that's all right on the ship and all
and the stuff
that.
in the house is okay.
Yeah, but as you said, there's a great big long chase sequence
that makes the one in Planet of Spiders look really short.
Because it does go on.
It goes on for
But what's
far
the
too
other
long.
movie you've got that looked quite promising? We only saw the first 5 minutes or so.
Yes,
so what's this one?
That's a more modern one. That's, I say more modern, it's about 20 years ago. they go to America because they get driven out of the house.
But this is a different cast.
Yeah, because it's a different
isn't it?
cast.
Yeah.
But some of the originals do appear in it. Because
Yeah.
there is a clip I saw somewhere with Al Lewis and Yvonne DiCarlo and Bruce.
They're in a restaurant or something. Yeah.
Butch Patrick they're in a restaurant and Herman comes up, he's their waiter.
Mm.
And the guy that's playing Herman in that plays it quite like Fred Gwynne.
Yeah.
It's more noticeable because there is a television series from the 90s called The Munsters Today, which we've watched. Well, I've watched 2 episodes. You watched one.
I only managed one, didn't I?
And that's the Herman in that is okay, but they've obviously made the makeup a lot simpler, and it just doesn't really work. It's more goofy as well.
I mean, The Munsters Today is shot on multi-camera video.
Yeah, and everybody's trying a little bit too hard.
Yeah, and to me, the whole point of The Munsters is it's shot on film to look like those Universal films. Because it really comes across, I think, that the really high production of The Munsters. You've got really good elaborate sets. You've got all the proper equipment in Grandpa's laboratory. You know, things spark, and you know when he pulls switches and things like that. And you know, even the makeup on Fred Gwynne is really solidly done, isn't it?
And it works much better in black and white because when you have it in colour, it's actually quite horrific. Because you can see that there's because obviously he's got stitches around his wrists, and you can see that they've made them red.
Yeah.
So so it's actually it works better in black and white because it dulls down the horrific.
Yeah, but just
side
the
of
way
it.
it's shot, you've got proper use of sort of shadow and sort of real proper deep blacks in the sort of background of the thing. So just the atmosphere, I think, is you know, the atmosphere I think compensates for some of the slightly sillier moments.
It does.
So you know, it is very much. You take your choice really with the Addams Family and the Munsters. They've both got very, very good things about them, but you might prefer one to the other, or you might not. And I find it really hard to call. So that poll was interesting, and I'm glad it was so evenly matched.
I think it depends what day you're watching it on as to which one you watch.
Yeah, what mood you're in. Yeah,
you know, if you're in a silly mood, you can watch the Munsters. If you're in a more serious mood, then you'd probably watch the Addams Family, though it has silly moments.
Yeah, but who would you say your favourite character of the two series is?
I think it's a really close tie for me between Herman and Grandpa. Yeah. I think they, apart from the whole biting bit that Grandpa does, I think they'd both be quite fun to spend time with. Yeah. Whereas I think Gomez, as much as I like him, might be a bit annoying after a while. Yeah.
I don't know really. I can understand that. You know, I've said in the previous episode, I'd probably like to spend a weekend with the Addamses. But yeah, if you were sort of having to spend a month with either of the families, maybe the Munsters would be, you know, more welcoming. I don't know.
I think they would be more welcoming. I mean, I think the Addams are quite welcoming, and they, you know, the one we watched with Princess Millicent, they were quite welcoming. Yeah. But it's a more strange house, I think, in some ways. Apart from the sort of whole dust thing in the Munsters house, I think it's a more normal house.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so I think we say we've enjoyed both series. But and we'll go back to them. I think we've not sort of binged on either of them really. We've just chosen selected episodes, and
we tried to pick episodes that cover most of the family.
Yeah, I think so. But both very good series in slightly different ways.
Oh yeah,
I think
very different.
So there you are. There's episode 29 of Round the Archives done and dusted.
Yes, and episode 30 will be our
Christmas special,
which we didn't do last year because we were doing Doctor Who. So we're going to do another Christmas special.
And we've already got some stuff done for that, and some other stuff planned.
So I expect it to be very Christmassy.
Indeed. Right, well in that case we'll say thank you everyone for listening. We'll run the end credits in a minute. But listen beyond the end credits.
Yes, there's something to listen to.
Because we've got a little bit of an extra piece.
Yes.
And this is mainly for Martin for his wonderful song at the start of this issue. I thought we ought to
give something a go.
Have a go ourselves. So,
and we can only apologise in advance.
Because Martin was perhaps worried about his singing. We've done this to prove he's got nothing to worry about at all. Okay. We'll say bye-bye then.
All right then.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That was episode 29 of Round the Archives.
Starring Lisa Parker, Andrew Trowbridge and Paul Chandler.
On the musical side, you heard Dan Tate and Paul Chandler.
The script for the Munsters' Love Locked Out was by James Allardyce and Tom Adair.
And the producers were Joe Connolly and Bob Mosher.
Star Trek is on the TV, starring Kirk, Spock and Scotty. The starship's driven by Zulu. When Chekhov has gone to the space loo, the Doctor is sometimes called Bones. Ooh-hoo.